Welcome to this week's episode of Sojourner.
Welcome back to the ongoing series, How Spaces Define Masculinity, a Black and Black-Biracial Men's Initiative. My name is Carol Jean Matthews-Shifflett, and I am the CEO of the Sojourner Group. I'd like to start by thanking my sponsors, the Utah Jazz, Planned Parenthood Association of Utah, Pacific Island Knowledge to Action Resource, PCAR, the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault, UCASA, and Inlighten Productions. Let me introduce Charles Odoms of Hartford, Connecticut. Charles has a master's in social work, is a counselor of men. He is also the founder of Black Heritage Film and Discussion. And next we have Al Davis from Washington, D.C. Al is a pianist, composer, and an IT business owner. And lastly, we have Jack Haslip. Jack is from Salt Lake City, Utah. Jack is a retired director of career and student employment services from Salt Lake Community College. Gentlemen, welcome.
Yeah.
Charles?
Yeah, I agree with all that, Jack, and what Al was talking about. And, my experience with that kind of stuff is that, they talk this phrase, systemic racism. That's just a byproduct of that. And that, again, where I came from, there were a lot of factories. Now they're all gone. And so a lot of the Black guys in my area, Black families, there's these young people who grew up without fathers. Their fathers are gone, and so now there's no money. And they see things on TV, they see things in the movie that they would like, so they don't have any of those things. So that's the idea of the gang stuff that you talk about, and being part of a gang, and because they don't have anything else.
Right.
A lot of them don't have anything else. That's how I see it. So where I live, like I said, it's a not a great area, but I've never had any, like Al, I never had any trouble with any of those guys. I treat them with respect. They know who I am. Hi, sir. They even say sir. So they're not bad people. They just got people who didn't get the right break in life, I think. The gang stuff. That's how I see that. Because, if you have a future, or you grew up in a two-family home with parents who provided for you, you don't normally go down another path, or a negative path, I'll say.
And that's something I always like to remind people. People say it starts at home, but not everyone is living in a normal home or a home. Some are living in foster care. So we always have to remember that when we say it starts at home, that not everyone comes from the traditional home, right, where they can learn masculinity.
I like to just say this, Carol, before you we have a saying in the trade: growing up in families is dangerous. No family is perfect, so growing up in families is dangerous.
Oh, I got one too. Everybody's got a phrase like that. I was watching this show on Netflix called Jack Taylor, and he's an Irish guy, and he does not get along with his mother. So he's fussing at his mother. His mother's fussing at him all the time, and then he leaves her house, and he says, "You kind of wonder why your family can always push your buttons." He says, "Because they installed them."
Amen.
Right.
So I have a question, on this idea, the topic of masculinity. What can you say actually worked for you?
Man.
Well,
Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, Marcus Garvey worked for me. I got angry when my daughter was born, and it's funny. It was one way when I was in college. I took it all personal, But I'm a free Black man. I can handle it, and fight my way out of anything if necessary. Mm-hmm. When I got married, my daughter was born, and I was working for this company, Hughes Aircraft, as a matter of fact, and they pulled a number on me when it came down to negotiating my contract, and I found out that they had a white boy who was less qualified than me. We both had the same position. They were paying him $10,000 more. Now, I saw that not as they were doing something to me. I saw it as they were taking food out of my daughter's mouth.
Wow.
And
very good.
So I threatened the manager. I told him if he didn't change it, I was going to whip his, you know what. And in 4 days, he changed it. But it was about, and it was about my daughter. It was about my child. And it was no longer all about me. And so I found that I needed to be a certain kind of man to raise her. You know, it was no longer just about me. And that changed me drastically. And that's when I went back to first speech I read. I remember sometime around that time was Frederick Douglass's "What is the 4th of July to me, to the Negro?" I said, here's a brother in 1852, you know, laying down the law to Lincoln. You know, that took a lot of nerve. And I went from there to Marcus Garvey and back and forth. And these became all ideas of strong Black men, strong in character. And so that's where a lot of my development came from. Unfortunately, I didn't find any in the church. That's a whole different discussion.
Okay, Charles, you were going to say something?
Yeah, Al, you know, see, now there it is. You know, by Al, to me, how I see Al is that how he grew up in that Black neighborhood, those middle-class families, and he had what I call, he had that thing, he had entitlement. I don't know if I would have done that in one of these factories, you know, but you were educated, hey, you're going to give me my money. I don't know if I would have done that. That's what I'm saying. See, I don't know if I had that much self-worth, but I could see as the direct,
well, it was about
your child rearing. I mean, how you came up.
Yeah, it was about my daughter. It was no longer about me. And that was the first time I felt that kind of love. Yeah,
but I don't think, how I see it is that, but if you didn't have that background, I don't believe you would have done it for your daughter or for Al or anyone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, I think it's great.
Yeah, if I didn't know that my father, Frank Davis, had threatened to cut a white man because of us.
Yeah, that too. See what I mean? Yeah, that too. Yeah, that's part of it. I really do. I believe
so. Okay.
Yeah.
Jack, do you have any response to, you know, what worked for you in this idea of masculinity?
Yes, I do. And you know, as I look and what Al said about what he did when his survival was attacked, that whole thing is part of that protect thing. You know, you talk about defend, protect, and provide, and you protect the people that you love, and that would do it as far as the masculinity is concerned. On that side, I think for me it was a developmental thing. This whole thing, the phase about being in college and a young man and having to defend myself and determine, you know, what I was as far as defending myself. Yeah, I could. I remember I have a son that lives in Atlanta, and or lived in Atlanta, and he said to me when he came home from college, he said, "Dad, I was in a situation. I was coming out of this restaurant," he said, and a white young man said something to the lady I was with, and I took offense to it. And he said, next thing I knew, I was sucker punched. He was hit. And he said, "Dad, that's the first time I knew that I could really take a punch." And that was a point of masculinity with him. Wow. First time, because I took a punch and was able to deliver back. So that whole thing it became developmental.
Yeah.
But the anchor to all of that was my dad, and what I heard from his brothers, my uncles, about what my dad did hither and thither, and what they did hither and thither. But they came to a realization that there's a better way than to be violent and so forth. But you do need to protect your family.
Yeah.
Like Al was talking about, I didn't see that as an affront to me. I'm saying you're taking food out of my child's mouth. That's not going to happen.
Right.
So that's part of that whole thing about being masculine, and
true
that
masculinity
for you in different arenas.
You know that idea of masculinity. Though, again, like I said, I used to hang around in the pool room, and even on the street, there were certain guys. I mean, you know, if you did certain things, you would have to deal with them. I mean, you might end up fighting or whatever. And so I learned that from that too. But like like your son now, and I know guys who didn't have fights all of their lives like that. and they learned it later. It was developmental. But where I come from, see, you had to know how to defend yourself too. Just because I hung out with 7 guys. You know how guys get into skirmishes, they're playing games and stuff. You just learn how to defend yourself.
Yeah.
It's a developmental thing, but you learn. I learned along the way. Yeah.
So I have another question for you. A couple of questions from Mr. Birch. Is becoming a man equal to coming into your masculinity? And then they want to know, how old were you when you became a man?
Oh, that's interesting.
That's a tough one.
I'd say this up and down. I became a man when I was 18.
Yeah.
Why 18?
I had to leave the house. Now, but what kind of man I was evolved over the years. And according to my experience and those types of things. But there's certain anchors, and I think, Al, you talked about what the church said a man ought to be, but to come to that realization about how to be a man or a better man was a process for me, and so it not just like boom, there it was, and I'm not sure that I'm the best man I can be at this point in my life either.
Evolving. We're evolving in this thing.
A work in progress.
Work in progress.
Yeah, it's like that. Like when I think of that masculinity idea, it was kind of hard for me to wrap my brain around it because I'm not the guy I was when I was 18. See,
right.
So, but like I said, I knew how to treat women. I knew that I needed to respect people. So I think that's masculine, by the way, just be polite to people. I wasn't a fighter by nature. I was a gentleman by nature. So, and I learned that way works a lot of the time. I don't have to be conflictual in order to get my point across,
Right. I remember.
Yeah, that's masculine. I think that's. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I remember when my daughter was a surprise, right? Her mother said, "Oh, really? Oh, do win? Okay." So I remember my father saying something to me because at the time I was just getting out. Well, I wasn't just getting out of school, but I was trying to decide. I was actually getting ready. I wanted to take a position because I'm a pianist with Quincy Jones. An opportunity to go play with him at someplace, and boom, she's pregnant. And so I'm saying this thing to my father, and at the time I'm 24. My father, he barely looks up from the paper, a newspaper. He says, "Well, I'll tell you this." He says, if it doesn't matter if you're the oppressed black man in America or not, when the baby say milk, somebody got to come up with some milk.
Right. Provided. Yeah. Yep.
And I became a man. It was like, and that was all he said. I knew then that, okay, for the next 18, 22 years, this is what's got to happen.
And I think a man meant that you had responsibilities, regardless. Did it have anything to do with how masculine you were? You knew you had responsibilities.
Exactly. And that's the lesson he was showing. I mean, he had 10 kids. Right, and he worked for the government, and he drove a cab, and he had dreams of playing baseball back when he was a young man, and all this kind of stuff, But he had to do what he had to do, and so that's what he says. When the baby got to have milk, somebody got to come up with some milk. Now to me, that's masculine. Mm-hmm. He had to make a hard choice. Yeah, his musical career or his daughter or his family, for that matter. That's a masculine concept. I mean, he did what you should do. Exactly.
That's masculine to me.
Right. I learned the same thing as
provider.
Becoming a man. Yeah. Because there are some dudes that are. Well, I'm just asking this question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would you say that's the same thing as becoming a man?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think so. I mean. Yeah. What do you think, Jack?
Well, you talk about the term man and masculinity. Like I said, when I was 18, I thought I was a man. And but the masculinity part of it, to protect, to provide, and to defend, developed over time. And so you could, there's non-masculine men and there are masculine men.
Can you define
So
that?
being a man is just a man. You know,
Okay.
male part, you grew up, but you passed 18 or you passed 21. You know, you are a man. Your masculinity, from my perspective, is what kind of man you are.
Okay.
How
Okay, thank
masculine you are. And I go back to those three main words: defend, protect, and provide. You know, if you're able to people depend on you to provide, then you man up.
But you know, I think did you mix them?
And so I'll leave it right there.
But did you mix them? Because now I'm thinking that masculinity are those things that you enumerated, like to provide, protect, and what was the other one? I think that's masculine. That whole. See, I think that under the term masculinity, there's these components or elements that make you a masculine person. Whereas a man is a physical being, a person, a male of the species. But a masculine person is someone who takes on his responsibilities, protects his family, do what's
Yeah, and I guess that's why some
responsibilities.
But the level of your masculinity, you know, because I think that it has levels of it.
Okay.
And so if you can step up and do all of those kinds of things, then you're a masculine man.
Yeah. I mean, so like what Al did with his daughter. I mean, a pianist, an opportunity to play with Quincy Jones, and he had to make that choice, and he made the choice. Yeah. And I know he feels great about it now, even though he didn't.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I've got two questions. I'll ask this one before I ask mine. What about women who do the same? Women who provide, defend, and protect. What do you say to that? Just real quick.
As far as I was getting ready to mention that.
Okay.
I was going to ask that question.
Well, you know, from my perspective, you know, when I said as a male to provide, defend, protect, and provide as a male, at masculinity. Okay. To defend, protect, and provide as a woman, then your femininity, I don't know what you want to call that, but society doesn't see it like that. And so I have to think about that, because that's a good woman. That's a strong woman that's able to do all of those kinds of things, because women are in roles that they have to do that, given whatever the situation is, even if they are, there's the man in the house or whatever, they still need to defend, protect, and provide as they go out into the work world, as they go do this, that, and or the other. And so, but as a male, we're going to say, what kind of male are you? Are you a masculine male, or are you not?
Just my brother. Yeah.
So,
and I think that you said one time before, I like the way you said it. It's a question of manning up, you know, and manning up pretty much means, if you believe it this way, and I'm saying a lot of Christians believe it this way, that there are assigned roles to the sexes, right? And so if you believe in assigned roles to the sexes, then a man's got to man up and become masculine and do those masculine things. And a woman who finds herself doing those things, it doesn't make her masculine that she's doing masculine things out of necessity. So she could do both, because as we know, there are men who do things that were traditionally considered feminine roles.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make them women.
Yeah, I agree, Al. And, you know, now, like I said, my father being in and out of our lives like he was, my mother was my mother and my father a lot of times. And she was the oldest of her 10 brothers and sisters. And she had a hand in raising them. But what I'm trying to say is, I don't see women as that's your role and I'm the man. I learned by being around my mother. She was just every person. She was father and mother. So I tend to be more, I'm not a man that way, like woman do this type man, or I'm the man and you're the woman. I'm not cut from that cloth because of my life, the way my experiences in life.
Plus, you'll get hurt like that.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for the next episode on How Spaces Define Masculinity, a Black and Black-Biracial Men's Initiative.